I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru. Fractal Design Define R6 is here, a mere 3 years, 1 month and a few days after Fractal Design Define R5, we have the R6. In a world where cases are getting really big and really tall, it's a bit longer than you might expect, it's a bit wider than you might expect, but it's not large. This case accommodates an eATX motherboard, albeit a small eATX, but it is not huge and it looks really good. But that tempered glass panel, that's reflecting light, so I'm going to shift it. It's just a pull to get it off. You do get 2 securing screws when you receive the case just to hold the panel in place. Once it's here, it's held in place by some sort of pop pins, really strong. So I'm going to give it a good heft and haul it away. And there we go. And thus the insides are revealed. I have removed from the top this Moduvent panel, which is lined with Fractal's standard noise deadening material. They're good with noise deadening stuff, is Fractal. The front door also has the same material on the back panel. Obviously the glass panel doesn't because it's glass, albeit the glass, it's some sort of sandwichy kind of thing going on there. It's not just a piece of glass. They've done something clever with that. And the case is really quiet. So the Moduvent panel, there's a button at the back, you pop to release the top panel, and then if you use a screwdriver you can pry apart the Moduvent bit of it from the filtery, gauzy, toppy thing, and then you can pop that back in place, and bingo, the top of the case is now open to exhaust air. I cannot imagine anybody is going to use this case, or very few people, with that panel in place. To my mind, if you want a completely sealed, dead quiet case, you're probably going to be quiet. I mean, let's face it, it's in the name, isn't it? Get some of those Silent Wings fans and you're good. This case, yes, it is quiet, but if you want ultra quiet, it'll do the job, but it just seems like a missed opportunity. I mean, this case flows air like a champ. You've got 2 140 fans at the front, 140 fan at the rear, open up the top, put your liquid cooler on the roof, bingo, job done. Loads of goodness. The build in this case, an MSI Z370 PC Pro motherboard, a Coffee Lake 8700K, 6-core processor. We've got some G-Skill Trident Z RGB memory, and it is worth noting the lighting on that memory is the only lighting in the case apart from the EVGA logo on the graphics card. That's doing its aura thing. I've got it some sort of flashing pink kind of thing going on. I think they called it Comet. Looked great. We've got the EVGA GTX 1080 Ti graphics card, and then the power supply down the bottom is a Seasonic 600 watt fanless, the new Prime Titanium fanless. We love that power supply at Kit Guru. Now, somebody said when we did the review of the power supply, oh, but what about the case, power supply cover? How's the hot air get away from the power supply? Well, apart from the fact there isn't a lot of hot air to come away from that power supply, this fixed power supply cover, it's heavily ventilated, and that is true of a great many cases. Yes, some cases are sealed at the power supply, most aren't. This is a really good example of what you're looking at. So the motherboard compartment is open, you can see the innards, it all looks great. You can see the Fractal Design Celsius S24 240mm Ace-Tech liquid cooler in the roof of the case, and obviously those are the fans that come with it. All doing a great job, lovely. And then you've got this thing here, and it's like, well, what's that all about? And from this side, it's just a blank panel that's taking up that much space at the front of the case, making it rather long. When you go around the back, you'll see it's actually covering a whole bunch of drive bays. Now, there are, I think, 9 positions, but you get 6, well, let's call them not caddies, but sleds. The idea is you can put a 2.5 or 3.5 inch drive on each of these sleds, put it in place, one thumb screw secures it, job done. Alternatively, there are a couple of SSD mounts that go around the back of the motherboard tray. You can, if you choose, position them on the power supply cover. There's a couple of locations there as well. So you want your SSD on show, you can have it, alternatively around the back. Add in the M.2 option, and you've got 8, 9, 10 drive options depending on whether you've got M.2, 2.5 inch SSD, 3.5 inch hard drive, all sorts of permutations. Which is a little bit peculiar when you think about it. After all, who wants to buy a case for a gaming PC and then put 10 storage drives in it? And the answer is there's going to be somebody doing it, but not very many people. I would say if you're building this type of PC into this case, which costs £135 in tempered glass option, you can apparently get it for £120 without glass. But if you do that, well, why would you do that? I mean, that glass panel's great. If you're paying £135 and you're building a gaming PC into it, I really do think you're missing a trick or two, even though it's a very fine case with all sorts of options. What you want to do instead is really build a full Monty PC. That was the Define R6 in black. This is the Define R6 in gunmetal grey. There are two other colour options. There's going to be a blackout. We've seen that. I can't remember which model it was actually. We have seen blackout before, which is matte black and kind of soft touch panels. Really nice, sort of a bit gummy and jelly. And then there's also a white with a black front, which is fairly self-explanatory. Fractal's quite big on sort of black and white combos. Also, I have to wonder about this. I've seen blue and red Fractal design cases, last Computex actually. I wonder what this would look like in either blue or red. It might look lovely, it might look terrible. Till you see it, you never know. So this is the gunmetal grey, and the thing is, it is the same case as the black, except I've moved a few things around. So for one thing, I've switched the I/O panel. This is the original I/O panel. That is the Connect D1, which is due in Q1 of 2018, so sometime in the first 3 months. $30 US, £25 possibly. So in addition to USB 3.0 and USB 2.0 and the audio jacks, you also get a Type-C USB 3.1 Gen 2. I've installed the D1 just to see how it goes in and see what it looks like, but the fact is that my X399 Taichi motherboard does not actually have a USB 3.1 Gen 2 connector on it, so that port is not actually working. Purely cosmetic in this instance. And that's actually exactly the point Fractal's making, which is some people have no use for that front panel with that connector. They might in the future, but they don't want to pay the extra cash up front for a relatively expensive case. As I said before, it's £135 for the tempered glass version. Add on that, call it £25, £160. That's a fair old jump. I presume it wouldn't cost that much if you had it installed at the factory, but nonetheless extra, maybe £150. So it's a way of saving money. If you want it, you can have it. If you don't pay for it. And that's a good idea. Similarly, this Flex VRC 25 is its actual name. So it's a Fractal Design branded PCI Express cable. And it uses the vertical GPU mounts. You can put a 2.5 slot GPU in there should you choose. At the moment it's a work in progress because there are going to be some specific standoffs to actually install your graphics card properly so it doesn't flap around. At the moment you put it in, it's secured at the back, it's connected by the cable, but it's a bit wibbly wobbly. So that is something they're working on. That's going to be available late in January, $40 US. So UK and Europe, obviously less than 40, but in the UK not a lot less, so that's going to be some expense as well. Clearly a cosmetic thing. If you've got an air-cooled graphics card, putting it up against the tempered glass panel will be a disaster. Always has been, always will be. Liquid-cooled, different story. So to rattle through the parts and components, we've got ASRock X399 Taichi motherboard. Still got to write a review. I did the video ages ago. I haven't got around to the review, and it's just updated the BIOS to version 2.0, which is a step forward. Lovely motherboard. We've got some G-Skill FlareX for Threadripper memory, which essentially is two of their Ryzen kits. So it's black rather than RGB. Hence, I've put some dark side LEDs along the bottom just to give it a bit of illumination inside the case. We've got a Threadripper 1920X. That's the 12-core version rather than the 16. The cooling system it's a paean to the whole industry of liquid cooling. So at the front we've got a 280mm Alpha Cool Nexus radiator, standard 30mm thickness. That's actually connected to the stock Fractal fans just to see how it behaved. We've got some hose which is also from Alpha Cool. The coolant in it is Mayhem's Aurora Red. The pump is an Aqua Computer D5. The pump top and the reservoir and the mounts for the reservoir, and that's significant, are from Singularity Computers. That's their Proteum hardware all the way from Australia. Amazing hardware. The mounts are significant because they mount to the radiator. That's quite common with reservoirs. In the case here, if you want to mount your reservoir to the case itself, the panel at the back, it's doable. You're going to have to drill some holes, or you're going to have to find something that's going to fit. It's not got pre-drilled holes, and there isn't a pump mount supplied. So Actually, Fractal says one of their previous pump mounts would fit in this case, but you don't get it, so let's forget about that. So mounting your pump res to your radiator is the way forward, which is what I've done with the Singularity. What else have we got? Oh, we've got an EKWB CPU block on the Threadripper. I would have used a watercool.de block had the block that I ordered arrived, even though apparently it's in stock, but I'm still waiting for the thing. And I have to say, the EK block, I'm not sure how well it actually works. It's a specific Threadripper design, but it seems to be quite a small contact plate. So to give you some numbers, this system, CPU idles 34 degrees, GPU at 26, so the CPU is warmer than the GPU. Under extreme load, CPU up to 67, GPU 47. That 20 degrees difference between CPU and GPU, obviously the GTX 980 Threadripper is a beast of a processor. Nonetheless, I think a chunk of that I can put down to the CPU block, but till I get my watercool.de block, I won't know for absolutely sure. Threadripper is a monster. In the top of the case, I've got 3 noise blocker fans. The top is open as with the black, so the Moduvent panel is here, so the top is open to breathe, and we've got the stock Fractal fan at the rear doing its thing. So to create the space, I've moved the drive plate back, which is a bit of a labour, so you have to lose the optical drive mount there. So that's a few screws. You take out the radiator rack from the top, you pull out a few screws here and there. You lose, and this is significant, all the drive caddies, which are all in horizontally because they're taking up the width of the case. And then you can move the plate back. Now in the photos over on Kit Guru, some of them show the cabling from this alternate front panel, this I/O. Shows the cabling hanging in front of the cable plate. I had to actually check. There is a small opening in the back of the case and the cable is now routed correctly. So this is how it should be. In those couple of photos, it's incorrect. That's kind of a before and after. It's tight. You have to fiddle it, but it does go. And that's a very good thing from Fractal, because a couple of other cases I've seen in recent times where you can flip the motherboard and you can move things around, you get alternate positions. And the cabling, there's no thought given to it. You flip the motherboard tray or whatever, move stuff around, and the cable's just hanging in free space, looking really messy, and actually in at least one instance not even reaching. In this case, Fractal's done their work. Now obviously this is not a motherboard flip, but it's moving a lot of hardware around. Also, the 5¼ inch bay, you appreciate obviously the optical drive if you want to hang out the back, but if you're using something like an Aqua Computer Aquero control unit for your fans, should you want to do that, then you can still put this back in, albeit you need to lose the Fractal design rather posh blanking plate if you want to secure this properly, but this can go back in even with the drive plate shifted across. This is open mode, as they call it. So Fractal has thought about the details. The case works well. In terms of storage, however, we have lost a whole bunch of the drive bays, but nonetheless, around the back, I've still got 2 3.5 inch drives, albeit they're attached directly to the case. I can put a couple of SSDs in. I can use M.2 SSDs. So I can use 2 full-size drives, 2 SSDs. This motherboard supports 3 M.2s, which is relatively common these days, but certainly 1 or 2 is absolutely middle of the road. So that is 5, 6 or even 7 drives. So you have to get the correct physical size of drives, but this case in this mode with this liquid cooling supports realistically all the storage that I need. So even though my options have been reduced in terms of storage, they've been opened up massively in terms of the cooling, and it works really well. Using the PWM hub at the back, all the fans running nice low and slow, but fast enough that it will work properly. It's really quiet. I mean, lovely, lovely, lovely. And that's with the panel off, you appreciate, and I haven't got a problem with the noise whatsoever. I can find almost no complaints with this case. The radiator plate on the top is held down with 4 screws, and then 2 more of those screws attach the storage plate at the top. So there are 6 fiddly little screws. I would prefer if they were bigger, so they didn't feel like they're going to strip at any moment. When you put that radiator plate in place, you have to hook it in and then put the 4 screws in. There are 2 sets of slots, one above the other. The top one being for the Moduvent panel, and then the ones below are for the radiator plate. It's quite easy to put the radiator plate in the upper position and the Moduvent panel won't go in. Realistically, that's the sort of thing you do once or twice. I've done it twice in the course of this review, but you're not going to do it very often. That is slightly annoying. You don't get a fan controller, but you get a PWM hub and fan hub, and realistically this motherboard and the MSI Coffee Lake board do perfectly decent fan control, as do Asus and Gigabyte. So really not having a fan controller but using a PWM hub, that's fine by me. And you don't get any illumination or RGB. As I say, that LED strip there is from Darkside. That's add-in. Clearly you can add lighting, you can add far swankier lights than that, you can add proper RGB. Do you think not having RGB is a problem? Everything's got RGB. Our fans have RGB. Cases are riddled with RGB. This, nothing. If you want to add RGB, it's easy peasy. If you want to add controllable RGB, proper RGB, that's also easy. It can cost if you buy systems and likes of Corsair. But is it a problem? Not really. It's a surprise. I mean, seeing a case with no RGB whatsoever, what? Okay. But I cannot say it's a problem, and yet it's the single biggest negative mark I can put against this case. And that means this case comes as close to a 10 out of 10 as I've ever had from any case that I've seen. We've seen quite a few at KitGuru over the past few years. I'm not going to give it 10, I'm going to give it 9.5, purely because it's not perfect, because nothing's perfect. But by goodness me, it's good. And this has become my new case with the ASRock Tai Chi and that Threadripper. Slowly my PC is coming together, but this case, this gunmetal grey case, is the one. I might possibly look at the blackout when I see it, but I think I'm going to stick with the gunmetal. I like gunmetal. So there we go. My negative points almost non-existent. I'm happy. Honest. If you like this video, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. If you want more from KitGuru, click to subscribe. I'm Leo Waldock. This is the Fractal Design Define R6.